fantastic guest.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode. And as promised, I am joined this week again with Dee Hunter. Welcome, Dee.
Hi, Brenda. Great to see you again and welcome home.
Yeah, thank you. And it's lovely to have you back on the podcast. So some of you may remember, Dee, when we talked about sleep, which was about our second podcast and very, very interesting. Go back and listen to it if you haven't already. But Dee does a lot of work in the wellbeing area and coaches some incredible people here in New Zealand, but I think around the world too, Dee. Is that fair comment?
Yeah, so I've got clients in the USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
this online world that we live in. Now, what Dee and I have decided to do, and we are absolutely freestyling it today. We were just having a bit of a giggle before we went live that neither of us have any notes. I have 4 words written down. And the whole idea of doing this, we're going to talk about well-being. We're going to cover a few topics like food, water, sleep, and movement. And the reason this conversation came about was because there are certain things that Dee and I think similarly, but just as differently on. And we both know, because we've been on the planet for a few decades now, that one size does not fit all when it comes to a lot of the topics we're going to talk about. Our take on it, our viewpoint, are both really healthy. We're very healthy women, very vibrant women, very energetic woman, yet there's certain things that we do quite differently. So I think to kick it off, Dee, I'd love to start on the topic of nutrition. Now, when it comes to the science behind nutrition, Dee's got so much knowledge. You'll really hear that come through. My take is often more on how I feel, but I'll talk about that when I get to it. Dee, when it comes to food and nutrition, what are some of the things that come to mind for you first when you're, working with clients or even for yourself?
That's such a great question. I probably studied over 100 different dietary models around the world, and I do not prescribe any specific dietary model for a client. I like to work with them to create and develop their own lifestyle blueprint, because every single person is so determinedly unique. Even twins respond differently to nutrition. And a lot of it, there's 2 things. It's about what serves you and how you feel, but it's also, underlying the food, people have this conflict with food. And what I want people to resolve that conflict and find a way to be with food and transform their relationship to get back into the joy of eating, so that they're eating food that feels good, that serves the nutrition, that isn't deprivational. Now, I don't care if they're carnivores, omnivores, vegans, paleo, keto, whatever works for them. I just want them to know their numbers, and I want them to track their numbers, the 5 big numbers of metabolic health. I want them to be exercising. I want them to be supporting their energy levels. But I really want people to find their own way. The only framework that I give people, that there's just so much data and research, is eat whole foods. Eat food that looks like food. Absolutely have your little sometimes foods, your cakes, your treats, might be your fries at the rugby or whatever it is. But that's got to be less than 20%, hopefully 10% of what you consume. And just eat whole foods, remembering that because it's on the supermarket shelf doesn't mean it's safe to eat. Just be informed and try stuff. But probably more importantly is that when they start to institute changes, when people are wanting to try different things, try them and get that feedback. Like, don't try something for 2 days and just give up because it's hard. Build that latent potential and that momentum, go, no, this definitely doesn't work for me. I don't enjoy it. I don't like the outcome. It might be they're bloated, that they're having some kind of reaction, the energy's poor, they feel like they're putting on weight, they're not getting the outcomes of the energy outcomes that they want. But really, it's down to the individuals to try and ignore the crap that they see on social media that's clickbaiting them. and just investigate this stuff for yourself with a few little guidelines. It's a hell of a mind thing for people. I know why they feel so overwhelmed.
Oh, look, and a lot of what I noticed, so I did a lot of work with people with eating and nutrition probably 16 years ago now, was a big part of what I did. And I noticed that people often weren't even conscious enough or didn't get still enough to notice what was happening in their body. And I feel now that I know what I know, I feel quite blessed to have had the journey that I've had around food. So at about age 15, I had suffered what they called irritable bowel syndrome. For years, specialist after specialist, I was hoping that one would have the answer for me, but they just kept saying the same thing. It was IBS. And when I separated from my marriage, so by this point, I am about 28. With that stress, I found that I remember one time having a toasted cheese sandwich. Now, one, bread didn't work for me, but cheese as well at that point. And I went to sleep. I just got sleepy and fell asleep after that meal. And I started noticing this happening. Now, probably about another 3 or 4 years after that, I read a book about raw food and I fell in love with it. I really did. And that was about the 1990s. But if I carry on with my journey, I mean, I've always been a big raw food eater, but it's not all I eat. And I adore a good savory muffin. So I'm not, I don't say no to anything. I'm lucky. I don't think I'm actually allergic to anything, but I've learned through the years to listen to what my body's telling me when I do eat something. And I know pretty quickly if I've eaten something that's not going to work for me, often within the first 1 or 2 mouthfuls. Now, I've also experienced bulimia, and I know I'm not alone. So that was, probably around 20s to 30s. It's an awful thing to go through. It is quite hard to recover from, or I found it quite hard to recover from for a long time. I wouldn't let myself get too full, otherwise I'd have a trigger. But all of these eating disorders that we hear about today, they're really real, and they're an illness. It's hard to explain them, but it's hard. They're like an addiction. Now, with that in my history, along with some intolerance to a lot of things, I discovered a couple of years ago intermittent fasting. And for me, I've never been a breakfast eater, and I'd love your take on it because I've spoken to lots of nutritionists who have tried to help me be able to eat breakfast. And the closest I got was like doing, carrot and celery sticks with tahini for breakfast. And that kind of, my body tolerated that. But typically, it's not a meal I've ever enjoyed or felt good after. So for me, when I discovered intermittent fasting, I had always thought it was about losing weight. But when I started to listen, it was more about gut health and really at that microbiome level and all of the processing that's happening in our gut, which now they're calling our second brain. So it's a really intelligent part of the body. And I'd been through a big life change. I had been very stressed, and I knew that at a cellular level, I needed some healing. And that's what initially got me into intermittent fasting. And I still today have an eating window of about 6 hours, and then I fast for about 18 hours. I come and go with that. Traveling makes that really interesting, especially when you're traveling with other people. But typically, I feel energized by it, but my neighbor could try exactly the same thing and it's not going to work for them. They need a hefty breakfast to get themselves going in the morning, and that's what their body needs. And I think that's part of why I wanted this conversation with you, and I'd love your take on the breakfast thing, because one size does not fit all. And we're speaking the same message when it comes to tuning into your own body, right?
Yeah, I've done a lot of experimentation around this particular subject because I call myself a bit of a camel. I can go out, in my triathlon days, I could go and knock out a 25K run on half a cup of tea.
Wow.
And I may have taken a small amount of electrolyte with me, but that would be it. I'm the body type. I like to run in the morning when it's cool. I'm not someone who can run in the heat. Do not enjoy it. Never have. Always a morning runner. And then probably more recently around fasting, intermittent, and prolonged fasting. I've done a lot of experimentation because, see, I won't tell anybody to try something I haven't tried myself, except for maybe Ozempic.
Yeah, that's very you, Dee. Yep.
And I've done several hikes, big mountains down in the South Island, where I certainly didn't load or carb load the night before. I just ate a balanced meal. I tend to do it 3 hours before I go to sleep, so it's not disturbing my sleep. I've got up in the morning. I might have had a black coffee, and then I'll hike for, in something that's, let's say it's a couple of 1,000 meters, and I'll get at least 3/4 of the way up or all the way up before I'll have something to eat. Because for some reason, I seem to be able to store enough glucose and energy to get me up there and I don't blow. So I've played with that to see where it goes. So for me, I can easily get up and get going and go to the gym, and I have what I need to do a really good workout. And I don't need to drink protein while I'm doing it, and I don't need to have it straight after I finished it, as long as I sort of get enough protein during the course of the day. Whereas I'm thinking of another client of mine who lives just over here who cannot get the energy to do anything in the gym. Even if she's eaten a solid meal the night before, she just finds, her glucose response is she'll get 15 minutes into a workout and she's dying.
Wow.
So I've suggested to her, even if she could just eat half a banana before she went in. I've just found that for me, less is more. And I'm not talking about less quantity. It's a smaller window of eating where my body's getting more rest. Now, of course, in my triathlon days, they told us to eat 6 to 7 times a day. Can you imagine what that did to your blood glucose? And it's interesting that I was whacking out these huge kilometres every week. On a Sunday, I'd bike 120 Ks, I'd run, I'd swim. And I was carrying more body fat than I carry now, just doing the moderate resistance and aerobic training that I do. So go figure that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just stacking the furnace the whole time, eating. And it wasn't unhealthy food.
Well, I certainly remember that one of the things was suggested that I try was 5 small meals a day as opposed to 3 bigger meals a day. I don't remember how I felt. I think I tried so many different eating regimes. It was ridiculous to try and overcome this irritable bowel syndrome. And I think, given that you're talking about movement, let's go there before we talk about water. I think for me, I grew up running. We had a swimming pool, so swimming was a big part of my life. As I got older, I was a lifeguard for a few years. I think we might even have that in common. I can't remember. I've spoken to so many people. But so fitness has always been quite natural for me. And not everyone feels like that. So for me to jog up a hill, I love it. And I do love the heat. It's like, I've found hot yoga about, 10 or 12 years ago now. And it's definitely been one of my favorite things to do. But what do you suggest to people who perhaps don't have that tendency? They know they need to move, but it's not a natural motivation for them.
It was never a natural motivation for me either. I was a good little runner as a kid at school, but I think from probably the time I was 18 to about 30, I had zero regular exercise in my daily practice. I used to smoke. I was a social smoker. I used to drink quite a lot. And I just, through a relationship breakup, pre-breakup, I started going to the gym, inbuilt shit detector. You can feel it coming, want to get in shape. I sort of, started going to the gym, and I just thought I'd like to be able to run. So I was running on the treadmill, and I said to someone, I went out running with some guys at work at a conference in Waiheke. I said, how do you guys run for an hour? I'd love to run for an hour. And they said, well, Jesus, Dee, we're dying. You could slow it down for a start. Dial it back. And I had no idea. I thought I had to run at that pace. So I slowed my running down, smacked out an hour, massive celebration. And
mm.
that's because I'm a really good endurance athlete.
Same,
And
yeah.
and the endurance is stuff, there's a lot of psychological, with the endurance as well. So for me, it's unequivocal, it's not arguable. One of the best things I can do, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life, is go knock out a 20-minute walk. It doesn't even need to be at a brisk pace.
Yeah.
Exercise is well and truly, it's the magic pill for everything. Don't use it to lose weight. It's a really bad strategy to cross that. Exercise for me has transformed me, and I've transformed my relationship with it. Now I see that as a critical part of my emotional and my physical, my metabolic well-being, and I see it as a sense of daily renewal. It's a gift and it's a privilege that I get up every morning to honor my body and exercise it, because the environment I'm in has slowly come in and it's transforming us all, and we're becoming highly sedentary. And for me to move my body in the way that it's designed to, because it takes 1,800 generations roughly to change your genes, I'm not supposed to be stuck behind a desk, tapping away all day.
Yeah.
So it's such an important expression. And I just say to people, just keep going until you find something you love. And for women, I think exercising or finding a buddy is a really good tool, because we love social support and men love competition. I say go running with your mates and try whatever. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
But the two important things are, it's not and or. It's not aerobic or resistance. It's and. You must do both for metabolic health.
Yeah, I like that. And I know that there's been a lot of research about walking and anxiety, actually, just you mentioning emotional well-being there. And there's a part of the brain that switches on when we're anxious that we also use when we are going for a brisk walk. And that's why when we go for a walk, we can kind of shut that mechanism down a bit. It's got so many benefits to it. And I'm often working with leaders and saying, if you're trying to find the answer to something and it's just not coming, then just take a pause, go for a walk around the block. And it's like we get those aha moments, and that's why. And, for me, when I've been going, I walk anyway. I've just been away and I walk everywhere, save a lot of money on taxis. However, at home, I know a few years ago when I went through a big life change, I just needed to get my shoes on and get out the door. And every time my head started overthinking and going crazy, which happens in life, no matter how much you are self-aware, just put my shoes on and just get out the door. And I'd always think, just walk a little bit further, because then I have to walk back. Just a little bit further, then I have to walk back. And if I can make it to 10 minutes, I know I've done a 20-minute walk. There's so many ways that we can just get out there and do a bit. And I love what you say, that it doesn't have to be a brisk walk. Let's just get moving.
Yeah, I'd honestly say that exercise has been the biggest revelation of my life, from being a couch potato
Wow.
to being someone who it's not negotiable. Even when I had COVID, I got out and walked 30 minutes every day. Not infectiously, I wasn't breathing on anybody, but I knew that I needed to move that viral load out of my fascia.
Yeah.
And anyone who got COVID, I told them, I said, if you're up to it, wrap up, just gently walk, just get and move the body. It's incredibly important as part of your recovery strategy. Just keep the heart rate nice and low.
Yeah.
And so good for, this, you get your brain neurotropic growth factor, it's just neurogenesis, all the great stuff that happens for brain, because your brain's just an organ like everything else, and it just benefits so much.
Yeah, for
from
sure.
Exercise.
I was giggling thinking about a lady that I met on a business retreat that I went to recently on Santorini Island in Greece. So it was luxurious.
Rub it in, sister. Rub it in.
Yeah. Okay then. Okay. So she had set us out a target of doing so many steps a day, and there was a few days where she hadn't, and it was so funny. We were having a business meeting and she was walking around the room. She's like, I'm going to get these steps in. I'm up to 60 days. And it's like, good on you. I love that stuff. And there are so many things available to us. I adore yoga. I absolutely love yoga because I get the stretching as well as the strengthening in, but each for his own. Again, one size doesn't fit all,
I
just
love yoga
moves.
too. I mean, what I use yoga for, and I'm not so good with hot yoga, although I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I love yin yoga, but I will do anything that invokes the parasympathetic nervous system because
Mm.
it just re-regulates and calms us down. So it's not about the woo-woo. We're in this elevated vigilant state. We're coffeed up, you know. So rather than use wine to bring yourself down,
Mm.
wind yourself down, like induce a sympathetic state in the body. And yoga is a perfect way to do it with movement, again, moving stuff out and through the fascia, the energy, the breathing. It's
Absolutely, the breath
incredibly
work.
powerful.
The breath
Yeah.
work that goes with yoga will definitely instigate all of that. The next thing I wanted to move on to is water. And the reason I added water to the list, Dee, was because I've been to your lovely apartment and uh, you choose distilled water. Is that right? And can you explain to
Yeah.
us a little bit about the research that made you land on that?
What a great question.
Mm.
So when I do some of my talks about the blue zones, one of the questions people are always busting to ask me is, tell me what you changed, Dee. What did you see and what did you implement in your life? And one of the very first things I did from traveling to Costa Rica and researching the Nicoyan Peninsula, the number one thing that they believed contributed to their longevity and the high disproportion of the centenarians was the quality of their water.
Yes, 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 agree.
They have these beautiful, I mean, Costa Rica is all about waterfalls and water. So I thought about it and thought about, underbench filters and all those sorts of things. And I got the water distiller because I also learned from a lot of research about a lot of waterborne obesogens and carcinogens, like those tiny, tiny, weeny filaments of plastic and all the things that creep into it. And this isn't a hardship. I simply, I boil it up and it's very quiet and I can do 2 to 3 liters at a time. Now I'll self-confess and tell you I am a shocking water drinker. I have to really consciously take a bottle and clear it at the gym. And during the course of the day, I have a lot of tea and coffee, I have a lot of, herbal tea as well. But I'm just not someone. My pea's got to be dark orange for me to get the drink to go and drink more water. I've never, and I think it's because I'm sort of short waisted and I feel bloated.
Mm.
But I'm a little bit anti-authority. And there just is no research that says that everybody needs to drink 8 glasses of water a day. Like we are waterborne beings and I get that, but I just tend to drink when I'm thirsty
Well, you
or when
certainly
I'm,
look healthy. You certainly look healthy.
well, I
So
didn't know the dehydration yet.
yeah. And you'll quickly know if you're dehydrated, people. I've seen people struggle with that and it makes you very sick very quickly. Now, I studied water a long time ago, and at the time I was working in alternate health, and we discovered a water filter system that actually filtered out the toxins, the metals, etc., but also put minerals back in the water. And then the tap system was magnetized and it actually energized the water as it came out. So
That's cool.
now I'm not a scientist, so I would just say to people, look, just drink this one here. Now drink my filtered one. And the biggest difference, as you notice, is that it dissipates into the body. It doesn't fall down on your tummy. Like sometimes when you drink water, especially if it's cold water, I choose to drink at room temperature. If it you can feel it fall down, and it almost feels uncomfortable. So now, but what I found a wee while ago, and a friend put me onto this, was hydrogen water. So it's a hydrogenated, yeah. And so I took it away with me. I haven't got it sitting in front of me, but basically I bought it from a place called Hydrogen Health. And what this is about is it's about making it bioavailable. And so we all know about that with foods and different, sometimes when we take supplements, how bioavailable are they? So it's putting in an effective like antioxidant, and it does mineralize it too. And it's supposed to filter it, but I still use my filtered water. I still don't drink out of the tap or anything like that. But water for me has been something that I've been very particular about for many, many years, as soon as I learnt about just how much it supports our well-being. Now, I would have thought I was pretty healthy. I am pretty healthy. When I started drinking this hydrogenated water, it's like, wow, next level. I'm not joking.
Okay, I'm going to give it a go. I'm
Yeah.
so there.
Yeah. And so what I do if I'm going out for the day is I'll just use, aluminium kind of bottle to put it in, because this is a glass. The hydrogen one is glass. But I think, I'm with you. It's all very well to say drink, enough water, but we've got to be drinking the right water that is good for our system. And there are so many toxins. I noticed, so I have just done a lovely trip to Europe, as you know, and I noticed my hair, washing my hair overseas as opposed to here, it feels soft and beautiful, so different. And I think, just imagine the harshness that it must take to make our hair go the way it does here, and that's going into our bodies.
Look, I lived in a lifestyle block, right? Tank water.
Yeah, yes, I
And
grew up
I would
on that.
immediately notice the difference with overseas trips or national trips where I'd just be on, the general system of water, communal supply. It was night and shade in terms of how dry my skin and my hair would be. I could smell the difference in the water when I was having a shower.
Yes, you can definitely smell it here in New Zealand. And I think listeners too, as you can see through all of this discussion, we could talk for hours on all of these topics alone. We have done. We've sat at your place and we have talked for hours. But, Dee mentioned right up front about a lifestyle blueprint and how she works with her clients to get their lifestyle blueprint. And I really like that, because one size doesn't fit all. If there's anything I could say about eating, drinking, movement, the more present you get, the more you can tune into what is happening in your body. And don't worry if so-and-so down the road says, oh, I've tried this new regime and I've lost 10 kilos, or I've done this. And it's like, if you want to try something, do, but it's not about following fads. It's about actually getting still and listening to your own body. And I believe your body will tell you what you need and how healthy it's feeling. So, and I love what you say about the joy of eating, bringing it back to the joy of living, right? Feeling healthy, feeling energized. What are some of the things you'd say to sum up this conversation? And given that it's 5 a.m. Tuesday, so it's all about choosing.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it isn't what, but how. And if I think back to the blue zones, people say to me, well, what do they eat? Are they all plant-based? And I said, well, that's kind of irrelevant. Like, you need to choose what's right for you. But here's the difference. They don't eat while they're driving. They're not in fight and flight while they're stuffing a pie down. Statistically, they tell me in the States that 70% of people eat every meal alone, even if they're not single. That just isn't how it works in these great communities that I've studied. They come together, they bond, they're communal, they eat slowly. And I just think that food is, when you're in a calm state, you're able to receive the food and biologically process it, probably so much better than you're in a highly distressed state. The body's just trying to grab immediate energy. And it's probably not powering up the mitochondria. You've probably potentially got mitochondrial dysfunction. And if people are sitting at their desk, I was in a workplace the other day watching them, and all I could hear was, from the vending machine, the energy drinks. And I'm thinking, they're just topping up constantly. So I love that whole thought of being mindful, sitting down, take a breath before you start eating. Don't look at the plate and decide it's not enough and you're going to have to get more. Like, go, that intuition is there to tell you that you're satiated or that you're genuinely hungry. And yes, they have alcohol with dinner there, Brenda, or with lunch, but it just enhances the mood. They're not there to obliterate their mood, because they're so connected. you know, and it's communal, community-based eating, it's family, it's friends, you know, and they've probably got that lovely oxytocin. They don't need to keep reaching for more alcohol because the need just simply isn't there.
Yeah.
And it's really just how they do things as opposed to just what they eat.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very interesting what you say about being with other people. I mean, it's in our DNA to want connection with other people. And I do live on my own. And so there's a lot of meals that I eat on my own. And when I was away, I was with groups of people and there was laughter. And you're absolutely right. It's a completely different experience. Completely different. So more about the how, listeners, more about the how than the what. Now, we will come back and have another conversation about other things relating to well-being, but for now, we're going to call it a day. I so hope you've enjoyed this conversation, putting a few ideas out there for you. Take it where you will, but wishing you complete well-being, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Dee, for joining me again.
Great to be with you again, Brenda. I love this stuff.